I am a wife and a mom, and I love community. My husband and I actually met doing missionary work. So we were part of a team of people. It was called Net Ministries, and we traveled around Ireland. So it was all these alumni. We got together. We traveled around Ireland doing retreats for high school and secondary school students. It was awesome and amazing. We lived with, there's 12 of us on the team, so 10 other people, and my husband and I, and it was super amazing. We traveled around Ireland and said all sorts of stupid things. So in Ireland, just to give you an example of some of the crazy things that we would say. In Ireland, they have this saying that's, instead of what's up, they say, what's the crack? And we were on retreat and we're socializing, and we were late teens, early 20s. So I feel like it was easy enough for us to relate to high schoolers, where now I feel like I'd be way more awkward. But I'm just hanging out, chatting with these girls, and they're like, oh, well, you're full of crack. Oh, good, there'll be great crack on retreat. And I'm like, oh, no, there'll be no crack on retreat. And they're like, oh, no, crack is good. I'm like, oh, no, crack's not good. Crack is bad, don't do drugs, crack's not okay. And I'm chatting with these girls, and it's hilarious because as I'm chatting with them, they're realizing that I think they're talking about drugs, because I go into no, drugs are bad. And they're like, no, crack's fun, and I'm like, no, crack's not fun. It may seem like fun here, but you seem like you're full of crack. I'm like, no, that's the joy of the Holy Spirit. That's all God, praise God. No drugs, all natural. And hindsight, I realized crack actually means fun. So someone goes up to you and they're like, oh, what's the crack? They mean, what's up? How's it going? Or, oh, you're full of crack. It means you're full of fun. So I feel like a lot of times we need to define what something is. And so we were part of this missionary team. We traveled around doing retreats, and sometimes he said really awkward things. And so my husband went up to this group of teens, and instead of saying, what's the crack, which is what you're supposed to say, he went up and he's like, hey, how's your crack? So yeah, we had to learn what to say and what not to say while doing ministry in Ireland, but we absolutely loved it. So we've been married now, oh gosh, I guess 12 years, and we've been kind of doing ministry and living community the entire time. So in the beginning, as I said, we met doing Net Ministries, and so our main thing was living in community with each other, with other young adults who love the Lord, and we did things like team prayer. So we were really big into praise and worship, and just praying together and being there for each other. And they were really big on sisterhood and brotherhood. And the stronger your sisterhood was on your team, and the stronger the brotherhood were, the stronger your team were. So they say that the relationship, the sister that you're the furthest from, for me, because I'm a girl, for us ladies, that our brother that's the closest to us should not be as strong as that relationship. So it was all about building strong communities. And I think as moms, we know the importance of community, right? We know that we need good, solid, amazing community. And we need that with our husbands, and then our children. Our children are the overflow of love from you and your husband, right? And so just as a family, we are a community, and we need more community. And I think even our world says community is good, and we need it. If we look at sports events, some people are all about their college team, or all about, I don't know, the NFL or NBA, whatever your sport of choice is, fill in the blank. And we have a passion. And when you meet someone else for the same team, you're like, oh yeah, and you have this great pride, My husband's from Australia, so he didn't have any set American teams that he rooted for baseball. My family, he had a girl on his first year net team who was a Yankees fan. I'm born and bred in Massachusetts, okay? My dad is Boston. I grew up going to Red Sox games. And so I told him ahead of time, I'm like, you've got to be a Red Sox fan. And he's like, it really doesn't matter. I'm like, oh, no, it does. If you want a chance of this relationship working, you better drop this whole Yankees thing and pick up the Red Sox. There's some type of passion and community, and it's oh, these are my people, And it's to a very small degree, I think, for sports events. Some teams are more passionate than others, but I feel like that's why we love tailgating, right? We don't tailgate because we really like hot dogs. We tailgate because we love community. We need to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. I looked up the definition of community, and it says, community is a group of people together working towards a common goal. Oftentimes they have same beliefs and visions, right? So what is our common goal? As a Catholic mom, as a Christian mom, loving the Lord, my number one goal with my children is to get them to heaven, right? That's what I desire to do. And who's better to help me get my children to heaven than other faithful people that love the Lord and desire their children to get to heaven as well, right? So oftentimes we need that. We need other communities. And you have like a big tribe community. So I am really blessed with my Among the Lilies ladies. So I do this podcast and I have this great community online, these Among the Lilies ladies, and they're just really amazing and beautiful. They're like my big tribe, right? And I'm sure you have your big tribe. If it's part of your school, if it's your church, like maybe you guys are St. Brendan's or your St. Joan of Arc or whatever your parish is, and that's your big tribe. And it's really important to have that big tribe, but then you also need your little group. So true community, what does that look like, right? So as I said, my Among the Lilies ladies, love them. They're amazing, they're beautiful. It's more of a virtual community, right? My whole thing is for Among the Lilies is for ladies who are tired of pretending and are ready to be real. So like being authentic and real. So not just showing people the Instagram version of yourself. To have community, you need to be real and authentic. I used to live in Ottawa, Canada, and my friends there were really authentic and really real, and they were absolutely beautiful. And we all were missionary wives, and so all of our husbands were missionaries. And we didn't have a lot of money, and we lived a very simple life, and we needed help from each other from time to time. And I remember this one friend of mine, Rebecca, she showed up at my house one morning and she's like, hey, let's go to the States, you and me. She's American as well. And she's like, let's drive south of the border and let's go get groceries in the States. Because you know what's super fun about groceries in the States? Way more variety and way, way cheaper, okay? So she convinces me to load up my 1.5-year-old and 2-year-old and her 2-year-old, and we get in the van and we start driving. And the thing about Rebecca is she's narcoleptic. So like 30 minutes into like our 4-hour road trip, she was asleep. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm driving to New York with my 2 little ones and her little one, and she is asleep in the front seat. I mean, that's being real, right? So anytime after that, she would try to convince me to do that. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. You're gonna sleep the whole time. But it's having that vulnerability and that comfortability that's like, I'm narcoleptic, I'm gonna sleep, but you drive and get me groceries. But we're there for each other, right? True community. Okay, part of being a missionary is that you don't have a lot of money, right? So we only had one car. We lived very simply. This one day, my husband, there was 5 guys that lived in Rockland, this town that we lived in that worked for Net Ministries. And we all had one vehicle, and they weren't so reliable, to be honest. And the guys would take turns driving into work. And so the other wives would have vehicles. And this one day, my 1.5-year-old fell in the garage and tripped and landed on a plug, like a plug that goes into the wall, and it sliced her lip open. So she's screaming bloody murder. I pick her up. We live in Canada. It's snowing, like there's white snow everywhere. And I still remember in my mind the blood trail that we left down this driveway. She's just like gushing blood. I pick her up, I have a 2-year-old, or 2.5-year-old, I grab his hand and I'm starting to head down the street. Rebecca lived like 3 blocks from me. I was like, I can make it to her house, she will help. As I'm going, a neighbor heard my daughter screaming, comes out and is like, do you need help? And I was like, yes, please. I didn't know this guy's name, but he lived on my street and he heard my daughter cry. And so in that moment, I needed help. You know, and community does that. They help each other. So he's like, okay, let me help you. So he drives me to Rebecca's house. Without even knowing what's going on, Rebecca takes my son from me. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the hospital. So this man that I don't know is driving me and my crying baby. And I'm covered in blood. There's a snow blood trail that's behind us. We go into this doctor's office, and it was the only one in town where we lived. Canada has private healthcare and public. And apparently this place was only private. And with being a young missionary family, we did not have private insurance. We only had the public. And so all these people in line let me cut because they see that I have this baby screaming and blood gushing out of her mouth. And so the lady behind the receptionist says to me, I'm sorry, you don't have our private insurance. We can't see you. I'm so sorry. To clarify, you're not going to see my daughter who's bleeding. I'm like, I don't have a vehicle. My neighbor dropped me off. Like, Orleans is 20 miles from here. Like, do you really expect me to go 20 miles without a vehicle? What do you want me to do? Ma'am, I don't know, but you need to lower your voice. It's like, got it. these people are not letting my daughter be seen by a doctor. Everyone's like, oh no, I went all American on them, okay? And she wanted me to be quiet and not make a big deal. I made a huge scene. All the people in line are like, this is ridiculous, this is not okay. No, and we love, like, community, people naturally want to help you, especially in a dire situation like that, where someone is hurt. People want to help, and like, this is not okay. She can use my insurance, you know, people are volunteering, and eventually they saw my daughter, and we had to give it an hour to see if it would heal on its own. And in that time, all these people are like, hey, if you need a ride, I can help you, you know, and people were just beautiful, and they came together and they were trying to help in some way. And I remember there was another missionary wife who wasn't that far from this doctor's office, and I went to her house. She had 7 kids, she was homeschooling. She's very organized, and her kids are in uniforms and they sit in desks, and she's amazing. And she's very structured, you know, and she has her set day. I showed up at the door with the bleeding girl. She dropped everything. It's like, okay, I know what to do. Come on, here's some calendula. So she's helping my daughter. My son's still with my other friend. I don't know what's going on. But like, that's community, right? Like, community is dropping whatever to love and help someone else. And oftentimes it's easier to be on the other end. Like, you're like, oh yeah, I would love to help someone whose daughter's bleeding. Like, it seems much easier to do that, but to have true community and to be really authentic and real, we have to be willing to do both. We have to be willing to say when we need help, and we also need to be willing to give. And both are equally important. As I said, we were poor missionaries, and I remember Matt and I had a fight. We had a fight over my dinner, over cooking. Early on marriage, sounds like a thing you fight over, right? But his complaint was that I didn't use enough meat. Like, we didn't have meat every meal or every dinner. He's like, why can't we just have a whole chicken breast, where I like cut it up so there was little pieces of chicken? And the truth of it was, we didn't have enough money. Like, I wasn't able to work in Canada, and he was on a missionary salary. And it was just like, we do what we can. And we had this fight, and the next day, it was either the next day or 2 days later, I was praying and just kind of begging God, like, all right, Lord, what do you want me to do here? What am I supposed to do? Like, I obviously can't get a job because I'm not legal in this country. I'm taking care of little kids, so I really wouldn't even have the time to work. But I'm like, Lord, you provide. Like, so I'm asking you, please, you know, somehow help us. There was a knock at our door, and I go to our door, and there was this beautiful woman there. She was like, her son, I think, had done net ministries. So I didn't know her that well, but she knew we were one of the missionary families. And she had in her arms this huge turkey. And I just like started crying. And I didn't tell anyone that we didn't have meat or that Matt wanted more meat for dinner, but we ate like kings for the next like month off of this huge turkey. And it was just so beautiful, and I felt so loved. And she, just out of the kindness of her heart, I guess the big turkeys were on sale. It may have been like near Thanksgiving time, but out of the kindness of her heart, she thought, you know what? I bet the missionary families would appreciate this. And to me, it meant everything, and it was huge. And receiving that love was massive. And being vulnerable enough to say thank you, you know, like, she didn't know our financial situation, but she was just willing to take the prompting from the Holy Spirit and like, hey, turkeys are on sale. Instead of buying 1, I'll buy 6 and go buy the net ministry families. And it was just so beautiful. And I love it. Like, that's community. I remember another time a friend of mine called me, and she was crying, and she said, I think it was a Wednesday, and she called me crying, and she said, my kids are hungry. We don't get paid till Friday. I have no food in the house. I don't know what to give them. And she's like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, come over. I will make pasta. I have plenty of food. And it was much easier on that end, but that's community. It's like, come over and I'll make food for you, and we'll just be there for each other. Like, community is just saying yes. It's seeing a need and filling it, right? And I think that as humans, we desire this, and oftentimes are very good at this. I know oftentimes if we know someone's in need, we help them. Like, when we see that someone's just had a baby, we want to bring them a meal. I think that's really a North American thing. The rest of the world does not do this. I realized it when I was living in Ireland. And the Irish, like, they do community really well. And I think it's just cultural. It's always been that way. And I used to live in Donegal. So I wasn't just in Ireland. I was like in the Gaeltacht of Ireland. I was very, very rural Ireland. And people's houses, when I go over to a friend's house, they're like, oh, well, you know, that's where my nan lives. And my aunt's down there and my uncle, he's down that road. It looked like you took a bunch of like Monopoly houses and like threw them out, and that's where people's houses were. So they naturally lived close to each other, and they just did community well. Like they were there for each other. They supported each other. I remember I had a friend who had a baby, and I brought her over a meal. I made like a chili or something, or a stew. And she's like, oh, well, why'd you do this? You know, no one's died. I was like, oh, I know, but like you just had a baby, so I thought I'd bring you a meal. Well, oh, okay. And it's not sandwiches, no. I was like, no, did you want me to make? I could have made sandwiches. I'm sorry. And she's like, no, well, that's what we do, you know. When someone dies, you bring them sandwiches to their house. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I'm so sorry. She's like, no, I've just never had this. Like, I just had a baby. I was like, yeah, you just had a baby, which is amazing and wonderful. And I thought maybe your family could use dinner. She's like, no. Oh, it's grand. Thank you. This is brilliant, you know. And she was so appreciative, and like she never heard of it, you know. And I feel like we naturally want to do things like that, right? Like we naturally want to do that. And when we see a need, we want to fill it. But I think we also need to do the other end. Like if we need help, if we were in a situation where we need help, we need to not be afraid to ask. When we were early on in marriage, we lived in San Diego. My husband was working for Catholic Answers, and Catholic Answers community was great. Like we had friends that we worked with, and they were so awesome. I was still trying to juggle little kids and figure out this whole parenting thing, and I had 3 kids, 4 and under, and Matt traveled a lot. And when he would travel, I just found it hard. And so people would say things like, oh, I don't know how you do it. That must be so hard. If you ever need anything. And instead of saying, oh, thanks, I'll let you know, I realized actually dinner would be great. And I had this one, I remember the first time I said it to someone, I was like, actually dinner would be great. And she's like, okay, like you want me to bring you dinner, or do you want to come to my house for dinner? I'm like, if I could come to your house for dinner, I could bring pajamas and toothbrushes, and then when I leave, I can just put my kids to bed. That would be really helpful. And it was great. So when my husband was traveling, I had these families that would have me over, and it was beautiful and amazing. My kids would play with their older kids, and I would leave with my kids in pajamas and their teeth brushed, and it was easier for me to put my kids to bed. So if you know of a way someone can help you, don't be afraid to say it. Like that's part of community. We have to be able to give and receive to make the community work. Your children, they're the overflow of your love, and we need community that can love them and can help take care of them, because it's hard. Like it's really, really hard to be a mom, right? And you can't do it alone. And sometimes you'll say something to your child and not get through to them, but someone else saying the same thing can get through to them and help them in such a different way. And when you have good, holy people that are helping your kids, it's amazing what God can do, right? And then their friends, like who they're friends with. I remember after my miscarriage, my son was talking to a friend, and these were 8-year-olds having a conversation, and she said to him, hey, I'm so sorry about your mom and everything that's going on. I've been praying for her, and I'm sorry for your baby in heaven too. Like, I'm really sorry you lost that baby. I have little brothers and sisters that are also in heaven that I won't get to meet till I'm in heaven. But she like hugged my son and was like, I'm praying for you. Like that empathy, like it's so beautiful. And like, no one talked to her about the dignity of human person. No one said, this is why life is so precious, but they're in a family that believes in the true, good, and beautiful. And that child can minister to my child, right? Your child needs other friends that are good and have been taught virtues and helping them grow in holiness. I think we're going through a time right now in the church where there's been a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And I think of a little kid. When a little kid runs and falls, who do they run to? Their mom. And they just want to be held, right? And you as a mom, like you have that ability to like hold that child and give him or her a kiss, and your kiss heals all wounds, right? And I think that it's very important this time in our church. We need good holy priests. We need good holy bishops, but we need mamas, you know? Like we need good holy mamas that'll help pick up broken people and say, I am so sorry. I love you. I will kiss your boo-boo. So ladies, be real, be vulnerable, be Christ. Like we as women have this beautiful feminine heart, right? And I think it's so amazing that the Lord has given us this beauty. And I think that there's a great quote, I think it's from the Second Vatican Council, and it talks about women imbued with the spirit of the gospel can do so much to aid humanity in not falling. And like that feminine genius, like what you have as a mom is so good and so amazing. And you are part of the solution. You are part of the healing. And you can heal your own family. You can heal the church. You can heal the families near you. So if you don't have your inner circle, like I'm sure you're part of a tribe, and I'm sure your tribe's amazing and awesome, but I really encourage you to go deeper and find that inner circle and really dive deep with them and share your hurts, your pains, your sufferings, and just love on them. And yeah, it's in the ugliness and in the brokenness that we're able to heal and love more.